Good morning, everybody. Welcome to TED Talks Ball. Super excited to welcome Brian Peacock to the show. You know him as at BD Peacock on Twitter, but also, of course, from the Locked On 49ers podcasts. Brian, thanks for being my guest. What did I miss? What would you like to tell people about yourself? What you got going on coming up? Like I said, anything I may have missed or omitted or not fully covered.
No, just subscribe up to the pods. I'm doing a daily San Francisco 49ers podcast on Locked On 49ers. Find it on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcasts, and also doing the Peacock and Williamson NFL show for the Locked On Network. Me and Matt Williamson, former NFL scout, talking about the entire league daily, which is what we do at Locked On. So, yeah, check it out. And at BD Peacock on Twitter, you can find the links to everything.
I love you and Croc do there on the Locked On shows. It's really great. Amazing knowledge, amazing. I always like to say I like to learn, teach, and have some fun. And I feel like you guys do a really good job of that. And so hats off to you too. I guess the only thing, with Croc, my only negative is just, he's a Lakers fan, but I guess that's not really his fault. Bad taste isn't necessarily, something we can hold against people for their sports,
you can't really,
who they root for.
About all those different teams he likes, man. It's all over the map. It's his only flaws. Like Lakers, then it's like USC football and UCLA basketball, which is one of the weirdest things I've ever heard. And so he likes the teams he likes, and you never know. You pick your teams when you're young, or the teams kind of choose you sometimes. So you can't hold that against someone too much. But I do love talking Niners with Croc every day.
No doubt about it. I'd love to find out more about how, UCLA and USC, they're like mortal enemies. How you could, I get USC. I get them all ultimately. UCLA basketball, that's like John Wooden. That's like, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, all those great championships that they won. I think they still hold the record for the most. So totally understandable. I guess maybe it's just different eras and different things, but it's good stuff. Should we talk a little bit about the 49ers, about things going on in the news with us? Obviously the schedules dropped today, so that's kind of exciting for the 49ers. It looked like there have been some leaks that have come out regarding Eagles, regarding Cowboys, maybe Seahawks on Thanksgiving. I'd love to get your thoughts on any of those things.
Yeah, the schedule is always fun, and we kind of know the teams the 49ers are going to be playing, but when and where is the big question now, and they're not going to be playing internationally, it looks like, and got some good matchups. You're going to play the Seahawks twice, so you don't need a holiday to make that one, an important matchup every single year. But on Thanksgiving it'll be fun, and you don't want a repeat of them, chomping down on turkey legs on you. So that's the 49ers got to flip that one on the Seahawks if they're playing on Thanksgiving. And Kyle Shanahan said it at the event, the Dwight Clark event there, the Golden Heart event, I forget what the name of the event was that they were doing this week. There's always so much going on with the 49ers. I'm like, oh, there's another event going on, and good. We get some Kyle Shanahan quotes. The Dwight, I don't know. Anyway, but the event that Kyle Shanahan was talking about, it was pretty much what I've been saying. Is like, the 49ers are going to play the Eagles. You just don't want it to be week one. And so December is much better there. So I like that matchup. Should be fun for the 49ers. And of course, we'll have to go through months of who's the quarterback going to be and who's the healthy quarterback before that matchup happens.
No doubt about it. Yeah, there were some content creators who were saying they wanted it week one. And I was like, heck no, for two reasons. One, because we normally start slow, at least in 2021, 3-5, 2022, 3-4 to start those seasons. But also, I felt like, the chances of Purdy being ready week one, I think that's dubious. He could be. I'm not saying he can't be. But I've sort of been thinking all along it might be IR for 4 weeks and pop in week 5, or PUP for 6 weeks and pop in week 7. But either way, there'll be time for him to warm up before the Eagles in December. I think it was the 7th or the 13th or something like that, the first week or two of December, if I recall correctly. So yeah, there's time for Lance to improve if it is Lance who plays and plays well enough to keep the job. And there's time enough if he doesn't play that well to pop Purdy back in there and hopefully get them all synced up, because there's a difference between ready to practice and then like game shape and then like synced up with all your weapons and fully ready to sort of maybe play like, hopefully like he played in 2022 is the hope.
Right. Yeah. And he's going to have to adjust to the adjustments because it's not going to be as easy. I don't think. I mean, maybe the 49ers got an all-timer in Brock Purdy. We'll see. That's a really interesting one because he was up there with the best in the league. It wasn't just like, oh, he's pretty good for a rookie for the last pick in the draft. He was the best quarterback in the league statistically for those 8 weeks, right? So is he going to be that? I wouldn't expect it. What's it going to look like when he gets a full season, when teams have tape to crunch and know how to try to combat what the 49ers are doing? I can't wait to see what Brock Purdy looks like in year 2. And can he make adjustments to the adjustments? Does he come out as hot post injury? Does he have even a tick more arm strength post injury? Because that would be one of the biggest issues with him is, going forward of being an elite level quarterback. If the 49ers believe maybe they got one of those elite level quarterbacks in Brock Purdy, and how quickly they've been willing to say, yeah, Brock Purdy's the guy, the leader in the clubhouse. He's the quarterback for us if he's healthy. He doesn't have the arm of any of the elite quarterbacks in the NFL, and you see the ball hang a little bit. So you question what the ultimate upside there is for Brock Purdy, even if he does have everything else. And it looks like he does have a lot else going on for him. So that'll be super interesting and super fun. And as the quarterback situation goes, if the 49ers start slow, it might be the perfect opportunity just to go back to Brock Purdy, no matter if it's Trey Lance or Sam Darnold starting those games, because it's going to be an easier decision for Kyle Shanahan to go back to Brock Purdy whenever he is healthy if the 49ers don't start strong with whoever else is a quarterback. But the big question for me is, okay, Trey Lance, he's a talented guy. I expect him to clearly be better than Sam Darnold, or be the choice over Sam Darnold if Brock Purdy's not ready. So what if they get out to a hot start with Trey Lance? Then that's where I think the real rubber meets the road with decision making. If they do go to Brock Purdy, if those ideas change, if the locker room, if Brock Purdy winning the locker room, if Trey Lance can win it back, he's going to go to his veteran counsel, Kyle Shanahan, before he makes a big move like that at quarterback. So I can't wait to see what happens with Trey Lance if he does get a chance to start a couple games and he plays well and he looks good, because it's going to be hard to go away from Trey Lance and back to Brock Purdy, no matter if you really like Brock Purdy, because that definitely changes everything to me. And, Brock Purdy only played a handful of games more than Trey Lance has in his career. So a couple more games, and that should be enough. If you've seen it from a guy who's more talented, who you spent more to get in Trey Lance, he could win that job back. And I expect it to be closer than we all expect right now, closer than the 49ers have publicly let on about Brock Purdy just being the guy and having the job, because I don't know how you could give it to him as well as he played and as well as the offense played, how you could give it to him based on that small of a sample. So a lot to play out there at quarterback. And then, of course, injuries and health before we get to that December Philadelphia game.
No doubt about it. And you mentioned arm strength, not one of Brock Purdy's fortes, but then also, he's only 6'1.5". And while he's super quick and he's got that kind of first step, that 10-yard split, once he gets moving, people are chasing him down from behind. He doesn't have that long speed. So those are 3 areas where I see an advantage for Trey Lance. And like you said, I think it is closer because we haven't seen Trey Lance with CMC. We've barely seen him with Kittle. And when Lance had Kittle, he played well. I think he had a 116 passer rating with Kittle on the field. And, when Lance lost, the team was struggling. I already mentioned the 2021 and 2022 slow starts. And then when the team was playing well, Lance won against the Texans. So, he certainly has the higher ceiling. Can he hit it? That's the big question. Injuries, like you said, he's had his fair share of injuries as well. And then even if he's not injured, can he just do it? Can he learn to do the things that Brock does so well? The accuracy, the decision-making, the footwork, the pocket presence, where Brock is clearly shown to be better so far. Those are all the big questions. And my big question is so you say if Lance is, doing great and we're winning, I think it's a no-brainer. You keep him in. But what if we're winning, but Lance isn't playing well? Or Lance is playing really well, but we're not winning. That's when I think it gets really interesting. And, because you also try to think about, well, Lance is improving and Purdy's here, and you assume that Lance is going to at some point pass him. But does Kyle think that way? Because I feel like Kyle is kind of like this guy who's win this Sunday no matter what. That's all I care about.
Yeah,
and ceiling be damned almost.
Kyle even said if Trey had the opportunity to play all last year, he thought that Trey would have done great too, and we'd have seen basically what we saw with Brock with Trey. And so he just hasn't had a chance yet, and the guy needs to play. And if I'm Trey Lance and I don't have an opportunity, and it's clearly just Brock Purdy's job, I would hope to be traded somewhere else, because for his career, he needs to play. That he just flat out has to play. And, he's going to have an opportunity in training camp, in preseason to play. Once games start happening, if it's clear he's not going to get a chance to play, I would have no problem if Trey Lance said, look, maybe trade me somewhere else where I have an opportunity to play, because my career's never going to get off the ground if I don't have an opportunity to play. And that's what he needs to be the guy that the 49ers hope they drafted in 2021.
That's right. You got to give Lance a chance. Give Lance a chance. That's the chant I've been howling this whole offseason, and I hope we get a chance. And I also want people to know that while I really love Trey Lance, I love the idea of what he can become. It's not that I don't like Purdy. I'm not one of those if you love one, you gotta hate the other type of person. It's just like I like them both a lot. I just feel like Lance, even before Purdy got injured, I thought Lance could end up being the long-term franchise QB, because my thing was, Purdy in my mind was good enough to win in 2022. Obviously the 6 games, the 2 playoff games. With the Eagles game, I didn't say we would have won if Purdy was healthy, but I said it would have been close. Probably whoever had the ball last, 50, coin flip type of situation. Had we advanced, had he stayed healthy, we advanced the Super Bowl with Purdy versus Mahomes. I think obviously Mahomes has a little advantage there, maybe 55-45 or 60-40, but still not unwinnable. But my thing is that moving forward, now we don't have McGlinchey. Now we don't have Jimmy Ward. Now we don't have Azeez Al-Shire. And I don't think Azeez Al-Shire is a huge loss as long as Fred and Dre stay healthy, but, they have to stay healthy. So ultimately, moving forward, and then now we're going to pay Bosa a huge amount, and then Ayuk probably next. And all of a sudden, you're not going to have the same team around Purdy that you had in 2022, realistically. So then can he win in that situation? And that's sort of where I'm hoping for Trey Lance. And that's why I've got the high hopes.
Right. And that's where 2 years from now, when you need a quarterback to maybe carry you more than just be one of the guys and you're carrying the quarterback a little bit, that's when you would need someone with the physical ability of Trey Lance. And the worst thing that could happen for the 49ers is giving up on Trey Lance too soon and not seeing, like, you trade up to number 3 and draft a quarterback. Like, it's one thing with Zach Wilson, who played so bad and put bad tape out there. Trey Lance hasn't put that bad tape out there like Sam Darnold has throughout his career. So it's one thing to move on from a quarterback when you've seen a lot of bad and you're like, no, this guy's probably not it. But we just haven't seen that yet from Trey Lance. In fact, we've seen plenty of good on tape in that small sample. He was out playing. The Chicago Bears could have gotten any quarterback in this draft. They're the number 1 pick. They went with Justin Fields. Trey Lance was clearly the better quarterback in week 1 again versus Justin Fields for the first 3 quarters. And, before the monsoon hit and really the very few big plays that Justin Fields made in that week 1 was coverage busts on the back end by the 49ers. And good on him for finding those receivers and making those plays and having the arm to go, across the field the opposite way when Hufanga started chasing after the quarterback who was rolling out. So he did make some plays there. But if you just watch the quarterback play, dropping back, making throws, making plays, having control of the offense, Trey Lance was better than Justin Fields in week 1 last year. We just haven't been able to see the growth from Trey Lance and let him play. And it would be really wild for a franchise to draft a guy that talented and not see it through and give the player the opportunity to develop. It's just something we've never seen at the NFL level. And really everything about Trey Lance as a draft pick and as a player is something we haven't seen at the NFL level. He was such a unicorn of a unique prospect. We'd never seen a guy drafted in the first round that didn't even have a season the year before he was drafted. They played only 1 year at FCS level football. There's just so much about Trey Lance that has been unique, and it would be wild to just let that go without giving him a shot and seeing that development through. But clearly the team wants to win, and Brock Purdy, if they believe, gives you the best chance. I understand playing him too. So it's just a weird situation the 49ers have been in, and the quarterback just always seems to be weird. And I don't know if that's the way it's always going to go, if it's a blind spot for the organization, or do they secretly have the best quarterback room in the league? Probably not the best, but a much better quarterback room than you would think with all the unknowns. Just a really for such a good coach and a good organization and a team that has been put together so well right now that have so many good players, for them to have not figured out quarterback in 6-7 years is crazy. And the fact that their jobs aren't on the line. I thought going into this season, Kyle Shanahan, if Trey Lance wasn't a hit for the 49ers, Kyle Shanahan would not be allowed to make the next first-round pick they had again in 2024. And almost nothing that – it would be very hard to imagine the season being so disastrous that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch wouldn't have their jobs because they were fired after this year now. So, and that's even without Trey Lance being worth anything to the team.
Yeah, I think it's just, 3 NFC championships and a Super Bowl in 4 seasons will do that. I'll buy you a little bit of capital, a little bit of GM/coach capital, I guess. I just want to call out Bryant Culp in the house. He has his own podcast. St. Ted always has the best guests on. Thank you. I appreciate that. Brian's a great guest. Allegedly, Steve-O says Favre withdraws his lawsuit with McAfee. That makes me feel a little better because I've always wanted to talk some smack about Brett Favre, and I was a little scared too. I didn't want to get sued, I'll be honest. So glad to see that McAfee's safe there. And then Silly Fungi is a Rams fan. He's saying, with all the weapons you all have, seems like Purdy would be a more consistent QB and would scare me more. Absolutely. Purdy has shown to be more consistent, better decision maker, more accurate, better footwork, pocket presence, all those things. It's just that the arm and the height are the 2 things that Lance has over him. And so if Lance can learn to do those things, it's arguable that he could, easily arguable that he could end up being better. But will he, and will he have time to? That's the big question. And I guess we'll see. Time will tell, as the wise man said. As far as there was something else you said, and I wanted to address it, but I lost it. So, we were talking about the best QB room, and is it a blind spot? I mean, I think clearly it is. We had a chance to draft Mahomes. Brady wanted to come here after we lost the Super Bowl. We said no, we're cool with Jimmy. We missed out on Stafford, and then I think moving up for Trey Lance was a little bit of a reaction to that. I loved the Trey Lance pick. I probably would have liked, you mentioned Justin Fields. I probably would have liked that pick a little bit better. If we had taken him, a lot of 49ers Twitter wanted Justin Fields. I had him kind of like Fields 1A, Lance 1B, Trevor Lawrence 3, Zach Wilson 4, and of course, Mac Jones 5. I was like, anybody but Mac, please. But ultimately, I felt like Fields might be the better option because I didn't think we would keep Jimmy Garoppolo. I didn't think we could keep Jimmy Garoppolo. And I thought Fields would have a higher floor, maybe not quite as high a ceiling as Lance, but I thought he'd be playable sooner. And so far that's kind of played out, but hard to say what would have happened if he was here. Ultimately, though, I think we made a mistake keeping Jimmy. And at the time, I was for it. I was like, hey, young quarterback, super raw. Last thing you want to do is get him injured or injure his confidence. Either one of these things can be long-term damage or permanent damage to a young quarterback. And but then, it's like we kept him out for 2021, and then he got injured right away in 2022. And not only that, but in 2021, Kyle wanted to do those packages, and the locker room basically vetoed it. I think the smarter move in hindsight, and obviously, hindsight's always 2020. I think the smarter move would have been get an Andy Dalton type who's not much less than Jimmy Garoppolo skill-wise, but who doesn't have that strong bond with the locker room so that Kyle would be hand-tied and wouldn't be able to do the things he wanted to do with getting Trey that gradual experience. And then, maybe if the other quarterback had gotten injured by like Jimmy did late in the season, maybe you stick Trey Lance in there for the playoffs, unlike, well, no, we got to just stick with Jimmy, even though he's got a hurt thumb and a hurt shoulder. And, I was pretty sure he did not give us the best chance to win at that point. But I think it was just like the sort of the click or whatever you want to call it, the locker room. But I think those were the guys, Kittle, McGlinchey, Juice. Well, CMC wasn't here yet. But that crew, I think maybe Debo had a lot of sway in Kyle's decision-making in 2021. So hindsight, I'm going to say that was another quarterback mistake, keeping Jimmy around as long as we did.
Yeah, and right away I said that it's a mistake if Trey Lance doesn't play because it was obvious that was the clear thing he needed to do was play. Would it have made him a worse team? Probably right out of the gate as a rookie for him. But they made the decision to move on from Jimmy. So when you make that decision, you got to move, I think. So I agree with you there, and they would have had an opportunity to get a pick, maybe from the Patriots. Maybe the Patriots don't even draft Mac Jones, and Jimmy would have been back with the Pats that offseason if the 49ers would have traded him. And, there were reports that they did get an offer. And then Trey Lance's finger, which is like the latest thing that turns out lingered even into last year. I mean, it's crazy that one finger injury for Trey Lance lingers longer than an ACL for guys. So that's another issue. Would he have even been able to play as a rookie because he would have been injured, just like he got last year? And then you get into the questions of Kyle Shanahan protecting his quarterbacks, protecting his young quarterbacks especially. So it's all just wild as it pertains to quarterbacks. I think the most egregious thing where you really look and you realize, okay, maybe they do have a blind spot at quarterback. The thing I will point to is not the Mahomes stuff. That was more of okay, philosophically, we don't want to put a quarterback into a bad situation. We want to build from the lines. That was more like they decided it before. And if anything, Mahomes almost made them rethink it. But in which they should have rethought it, obviously now. But the most egregious thing the front office has done was seemingly not even workshop the idea of moving up to number 3 in the draft on March 26th in 2021, moving up so early. For them to have had the evaluation that Mac Jones would even be someone you should consider moving up to number 3 for, that tells me a lot. That worries the heck out of me about quarterback evaluations. And they've done so well in the later rounds and picking players. And it's strange how a team can look at Mac Jones and say, oh, we would trade up to number 3 for this player. Is just, I thought he was a second round guy. And I thought 15 was too high. I thought 12 was too high where the 49ers originally were. They're looking at that and they're like, we're going to trade up to number 3 potentially for Mac Jones. And they ended up with Trey Lance, right? And like you, I thought Justin Fields was the pick just because if you're going to go there, you're going to go upside, and he has the ability and the 4.4 speed and the arm and the deep ball accuracy and, the toughness, and played a whole lot of games and a lot of high leverage games at Ohio State. I just thought it was a better picture of a prospect, and we'll see what he ends up being. And it's taken him a little while in the NFL. But when it comes to the quarterback evaluations, thinking that you might move up and spend 3 first-round picks, move up from 12 to 3 to draft Mac Jones, is that the person that thinks that shouldn't be allowed to make draft picks, in my opinion. That is so bad. And so that's the biggest thing to me, proving that there's something weird there with the quarterback position, and maybe a blind spot there because they're so good at picking off starters in the 5th round. They're clearly doing something right with this team building aspect and drafting players, but the quarterback stuff is just continually every single year to not know who your quarterback is in year 6, year 7 for a team this good is something I've never seen before.
No doubt about it. Got some Rams fans in the house. I want to call them out too. Ramilia Sports Report. They like to tease us about 94 since it was the last time we won a Super Bowl. Jim Everett the Great parroting him. Then they show the VCRs. They don't realize that all those Super Bowls are actually on YouTube now, guys. You don't have to use a VCR to watch them. But I get the joke. And I just tell the Rams fans, hey, if it's been so long, then how come you guys haven't caught up? Or they don't even have half as many. And, it's 5-2. And honestly, who are we kidding? None of the Rams fans rooted for both of those teams. If you're an LA Rams fan, you weren't a fan of St. Louis, and the St. Louis fans certainly aren't fans of the LA Rams. So to claim 2 is even a little bit of a funny thing. I'm not going to say they're none, but they all claim to represent both. But I can tell you it's a very few number that actually rooted for both.
And then you should also ask the Rams fans how they're feeling about that long-term rebuild that they're about to go through.
Oh, yeah. Ramsey traded away for a 3rd and a tight end. Bobby Wagner walked. I've got a whole list here. Hold on, let me bring it up. The Rams had a not so glorious offseason. I mean, a lot of people like their draft. I had a couple or 3 draft experts on, and they were saying they felt like they did really well. I just don't think that they're going to contend with us and the Seahawks. I think the Seahawks closed some ground on us in their draft. Maybe that's a good segue to talk some draft, but real quick, the Rams lost Ramsey, Bobby Wagner, Nick Scott, Taylor Rapp, Greg Gaines, who's a good defensive tackle, Leonard Floyd, good D-end, both A-Robs, Allen Robinson, the wide receiver, and Ashawn Robinson, the defensive tackle. I think there were more too, but those were some of the notable Rams departures. So when they say, run it back, run it back. I'm like, all they did was run their stars out of town, really.
And, they got a couple good players there still, but obviously Aaron Donald's not going to hang on for very long. Was already looking at retirement. Their head coach was looking at retirement, but apparently he wants to try the rebuild. And we know what's going on with Matthew Stafford, and he's going to age out probably sooner rather than later and has some arm troubles on top of it. So, that's a team that I would not put any, I would not be buying the Rams stock right now going forward. So, but good job. They won it, who knows if Jaquiski Tartt caught that ball, it would have been all like, that's one of the things where it's like, okay, going all in. I know the fans like the trades and going all in. It's McCaffrey and trading 3 picks for a quarterback. You got to go for it. You got to be aggressive. And it's like, yeah, it's good if it works. But man, and we're going to see it right. We're going to see it actually next year and the year after with the 49ers not having those first round picks, not having high picks. They got to hit on those late rounders again this year, or it's a draft class that's not going to give you much. And it's so important to have young, good, cheap players because the 49ers roster is getting old and expensive rapidly. So that's where I look at the 49ers going ahead, and they obviously didn't go in as hard as the Rams did because but the Rams got their Lombardi, so it's good for them. We'll see if it's worth it in the end, what this rebuild looks like for the Rams. But for the 49ers, they got to go win one, right? Because when you see the lack of draft picks and you see teams like the Eagles and the Seahawks that get so much better on draft day, and they have this young, controllable talent that's part of the foundation going forward, the 49ers need more foundational pieces and more young players when Trent Taylor retires and when Kittle's in his 30s now, and an injury here or there, and some guys start to get old and retire or fall off, and you don't have that young talent that you would have drafted in, consecutive first rounds and second rounds. It starts to get a little bit more difficult to sustain. And for me, as a sports fan, I want to see sustained competitive teams more than I want to see, one blip of one season out of nowhere and then, going back and becoming the Lions or the Jets for 20 years.
And that could very easily happen. We'll see. I do believe in McVay. I think he's a pretty good coach. Not as good as Kyle, but ultimately, I think Kyle, he's got to find his QB to really show how great he can be. We saw some glimpses of it with Brock. I'm just trying to imagine what it would look like with Brock's skills and, like I said, a taller, bigger armed QB like what we all hope Lance can be. Real quick, also, Jim Everett the Great says LeGoat, as in LeBron, getting his 5th. Well, we'll see. They got to win Friday, or it could be trouble. If it comes back to Chase, I wouldn't bet on the Lakers, but they got a good chance at crypto this Friday for sure.
Game 6 is Game 7.
Yeah, it seems like it.
I won't be more confident than any game on the NBA schedule all year than the Warriors winning Game 7 at home if they take Game 6. So Game 6 is the series to me at Los Angeles. That's the big one. You got to take that home court back. If the Warriors don't win this series, you got to look at Game 4 because they had it. They should have taken home court back then. It should be a 3-2 series right now with 2 more to play and still getting that Game 7 at home. So they blew that one in Game 4. But Game 6, if they win it, that's the series to me. And the Warriors would be huge favorites in Game 7 at home.
There you go. And then Steve was talking some trash. He says, not in your lifetime. To Jim Everett said that the Rams will have 5 because he's convinced the Rams have 4. They count the pre-Super Bowl championships. And it's like, no, buddy, those are not Super Bowl rings. Those are not Lombardis. Those are when there was like 12 teams. I think an NFC championship win is a greater accomplishment now than beating the 12 teams playing in leather helmets on black and white TV back then. But we'll see. We'll see.
You can't win a Super Bowl if there wasn't a Super Bowl. That's different.
Exactly. And the Silly Fungi is actually excited for the rebuild. And this is a real fan. I like Silly Fungi. Although I'm kind of waiting for his dad joke. He always whips out a good dad joke for us. So we'll see if he comes up with one. But he says excited. They have a great core to build on. I mean, like I said, they have Stafford, they have Kupp, and they have Aaron Donald. But I don't know if that's a great core. That's 3. And like you said, one is aging, and AD, Aaron Donald, has already flirted with retirement. So I don't think that's far off. Lakers favored by 2.5, and he says they count, Ted. All right, agree to disagree. So should we talk some about the 49ers draft? Love to get your thoughts overall, likes, dislikes. We can start with, the first, or however you want to begin talking about it. I got that banner flying below.
Yeah. Some of the fans, some of the listeners that Locked On 49ers haven't been super happy with Crocker Eye because we didn't love the 49ers draft this year. I think I gave it a D+. And there's something to like about all the guys that they drafted. Clearly, they got drafted for a reason. These are talented human beings. But when you consider what the 49ers could have done in the draft, I think they dropped the ball a little bit. Specifically, you got to start with the kicker, third-round kicker. It's never going to get a high grade for me. Kickers do not work out for the teams that draft them. The best kickers in the league aren't found by drafting them high. It's the way it is. And if it happens for Jake Moody, I'm not saying it can't happen for Jake Moody. If it happens, he will be the outlier that it works out for the team that drafts a third, a second kicker. It just doesn't work out. You got to start talking about the 1990s. You got to start talking about Janikowski and Jason Hanson and some names like that. And like here's a thought experiment for anybody thinking about kickers. Just think about some of the best kickers in your lifetime in the NFL. Just think about the kickers in your head, Vinatieri, whoever, Robbie Gould. The player you're thinking about is in his 30s and maybe 40s. Like, that's just the way it is. That's when kickers hit they're like the reverse running backs, right? About the time running back careers end in the late 20s, that's when kickers start really becoming great. Justin Tucker was undrafted. Robbie Gould was undrafted. I think the highest pick looking at the best kickers in the league in recent history, the highest one that was drafted was the 5th round, Matt Gay. And he's already on his 3rd team now in the NFL. And he didn't hit for the team that drafted him. So it's just tough. The last 10 years, 17 kickers have been drafted. Only one of those kickers has gotten a second contract with the team that drafted. And then on top of that, so kickers, peak late. On top of that, Jake Moody sitting here, 3rd round pick, has all this added pressure from the fans, from the media, because he was a high draft pick, because that sticks out, and that's just, that's just easy to see and easy to call out. And then his own coach and his own GM don't really like the pick, so that's what tells me not to like the pick. John Lynch goes on local San Francisco radio and says, well, we're not doing cartwheels that we had to draft a kicker in the 3rd round. Like, come on, dude. You don't even like the guy that you drafted. You're forced to draft him. It's hard to evaluate kickers anyway. It's not like Kyle Shanahan's out in there crunching kicker tape. They're like, hey, who's the best guy? And everyone's like, probably Jake Moody. And like, all right, well, we're going to draft him because we don't want anybody else to draft the best kicker. And we saw him do it with the punter a few years ago in Mitch Wishnowsky. But yeah, so you're never going to get a high grade drafting a kicker, especially when it's the 2nd pick that you have. You draft them at pick 99. They moved up and got a player I really like in Jair Brown. I had the same questions about Brown that I had with Talanoa Hufanga, because I don't know about the deep speed. There's times on film when you see the speed be a problem. Like, he doesn't have great closing speed, going from center field to the sideline to break up a pass. It's tough. And he's really instinctive, and he's a good player, and he's fun film to watch, just like Hufanga. And it hasn't been a huge problem for Hufanga, the speed, but if you have two Hufangas, do you start to run into some problems with range in coverage? And there was a time, one specific play, go watch the Ohio State game against Penn State and Jair Brown. The running back just blows by him. And he's just like, he looks like he's in a swimming pool trying to catch up to a running back. He doesn't have great top end speed, but he's got a lot else. And I really liked the Jair Brown tape, and I'm not surprised the 49ers like Jair Brown a lot. So it was a good pick, 3rd round guy. I thought they drafted a 3rd round guy in the 3rd round.
Can I interrupt there? Can I interrupt about Jair Brown? The one thing I didn't like about Jair Brown was we picked him at 87. I don't mind that, but it was who went at 93. Big old Darnell Washington, the Georgia tight end, went at 93. And I thought, he looks like a monster. He's tall. He's got good hands. He made that blocking sled look like a toy. Anyway, I hope I'm wrong, but I just saw, and I've talked to some draft experts, and they were kind of like, oh, don't worry too much, Ted. But then I saw this thing come out where some GM was saying he might have been the steal of the draft. I'm like, no. You never know. No one knows.
Yeah, right? I wasn't nearly as high as other people were on Darnell Washington.
Okay, good.
He's big and athletic and stuff, and he can block. And I like him better than Cameron Latou, who went, 8 picks later. So
there you go. Same with me.
And that's sort of the thing for me is playing the value game with the draft. The 49ers are like, well, we need a safety and a kicker and a tight end, so we're going to draft those three. And so I feel like they really forced need to me, and they could have played the draft game a lot better and drafted the same positions and I think gotten a lot better value, and in the end gotten better players, and we'll see. But Cameron Latou, I thought was he's a good player, but I thought he was a 5th round guy that they got in the 3rd round, and he's kind of a one speed player. He's very smooth. He's got good hands. He's kind of hit or miss as a blocker. Sometimes he looks, willing and good and will knock people over, and then other times he looks like he's not a good blocker at all. So we'll see what he ends up looking like. But if you're drafting a backup tight end in the 3rd round, that's not great value. Darnell Washington would have been a much better player, I think, there, just more talented guy. But I just think the smart move there would have been wait in a deep tight end class, wait until the value hits you. And I think they did get a lot better value in the 7th round with Braden Willis, who I thought were, was a very similar grade. I like Latou better than Willis, but I thought they were pretty close in grades. And I thought they were, kind of 5th, 6th round guys. I like Davis Allen better than both of them, who win a couple picks after Beal in the 5th round to the Rams. So I just didn't think the Niners did a good job at all of drafting with value and letting the draft board work for them. I thought they really just forced need in a lot of spots, especially early in the draft. Now, did the 49ers do what they do and get steals and get gems in the 5th round? And so that's where this class is going to have to sort of, do what and I talked to some Titans fans after Ran Carthon got hired as GM of the Titans, and they're like, oh, why are the 49ers so good? What can Ran Carthon bring over from the 49ers organization? And it was like, you know what? I don't think there's a handbook for what the 49ers did, because I think on one hand, collaborative process, clearly Mike Vrabel won the power struggle there in Tennessee. So, and just like with the 49ers, it's Kyle's show. And so a GM that works well with the coach and goes and gets the guys the coach wants. And I think a good working relationship there, and, drafting high character players and, guys who are wired correctly, which the 49ers have clearly done a good job of. And they did that in this draft as well, which is where, you get excited about this draft, because that's where they do well, is they draft the guys that are going to max out what their talent level is. But then I was like, I don't think you can write a handbook that's like kind of misstep the quarterback every step of the way, and like kind of give up too much value in trades often, and just say that we wanted this and we knew we overpaid, but that's okay because we wanted the thing that we needed, and then hit on historic level of 5th, 6th, 7th, and undrafted free agents. Draft your starting quarterback in the 7th round. Hit starters and stars in the 5th round. You can't write that in your handbook because nobody does that. But the 49ers have consistently done that. Can they continue to do that? Or if that well dries up, this is one of those drafts where you could look back and go, oh my God, they got a backup tight end, like an okay safety. They drafted a kicker who's maybe not on the roster anymore, and maybe some special, they might not have a lot to show for it potentially. Or did they draft some stars? Is Darrell Luter long-term starting corner for them? So that's what they need out of this draft. They really have hit in this draft. I do like Luter. I think Beal, I would have liked to see more out of him in the college game with his physical gifts over the course of 5 years. I wonder why he's still so raw. You shouldn't be that raw after 5 years. It makes sense that someone like Trey Lance is raw because he played so little. But when you played at Georgia for 5 years, and and Jair Brown had more plays behind the line of scrimmage than you did as a defensive lineman, as an edge player, then that's not a great sign. So we'll see what it ends up looking like there. But in the 7th round, guys were drafted so late too. It's hard to, they're going to be competing with undrafted guys, and the hit rates aren't great in the 7th round. But some players that compete, that you like, that have a chance. And so special teams is probably the path for a lot of these guys early on in their careers. Again, I didn't like the value for a lot of the picks they made. I thought they should have gone O-line, D-line much earlier and waited on tight end and not drafted a kicker. So overall, I didn't love the draft class. But look, if they got a long-term kicker and Moody does, become a stronger-legged Robbie Gould, and they got a starting safety, and they got a lot of depth, and they got maybe those 8 steals, then it's going to end up looking like a really good draft and a lot better draft class than I gave him credit for at the time.
I hope so because I gave him a B. So we'll see.
What did you like about their draft? What were the picks that you're like, oh, they did a really good job because of this?
Well, I mean, I like, I like D Winters. I like Robert Beal. Luter, I think, could be good. We'll see. I really like Braden Willis. I think Ronnie Bell will replace Juwan Jennings, or either he or Isaiah Winstead. One of those two guys, I think, will replace Juwan Jennings.
Yeah, I do like the winner's pick, and that's where you can really get a steal as a
I feel like he's a Dre. I feel like he's a Dre Greenlaw clone.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I liked what he did. I saw him play at TCU against Michigan and stuff. So
I love the way he comes downhill. He's got that athleticism, and they've kind of hit on that style of player. So they've done a really good job there. So I wouldn't be shocked if he's one of those hits for them on day 3. As far as Bell and Winstead, I'd be surprised if either one of them isn't more than a practice squad guy. That's the way I look at them. And I don't think,
this year,
I don't think they're going to be replacing. I don't think they're going to replace Juwan Jennings in a way that, maybe they make the roster next year or in future years and Juwan Jennings isn't re-signed and he ends up somewhere else. But
that's what I think.
As far as what Juwan Jennings has been, they're not going to replace that. It'll be another player who comes in and is that part of the roster at the bottom of the roster. That's the way I look at Bell.
Okay.
Instead. Practice squad guys who maybe they're around next year, maybe they're not. But who knows? Again, like maybe there's a lot more there that I'm not seeing.
Well, and then there's that the Graham, the linebacker out of Purdue, is a good cover linebacker. So we'll see. I don't like Latu. I didn't like Jake Moody at 3. It made me feel a little better when the Patriots bailed us out again, like they did with Wisnowski when they took a punter away after we took him, and then they took Chad Ryland, 12 picks or 13 picks after we took Jake Moody. They say 2 wrongs don't make a right, but it still made me feel better.
It's actually interesting, and to the Rams fans that are in the chat, I did think the Rams had a pretty good draft for what they had. They didn't have a first rounder either, but Davis Allen in tight end in the 5th round, I thought was a really good pick by them. I think he could, I think he'll be a starter for them after the Higbee era is over. I think he's that good, a really good inline blocker, just classic tight end, athleticism, basketball athleticism, short area, can go up in the red zone and pluck the ball out of the air. Wide tight end. And then they got Christopher Dunn after the draft, undrafted kicker, who's the Lou Groza Award winner. So that'll be interesting to see if the Rams tight end and the Rams kicker, who were drafted later, better than the 3rd round kicker and tight end that the 49ers drafted, because I thought the Rams got much better value with those 2 positions specifically in their draft.
As a wise man said, time will tell. And while we're speaking of time, we're getting close to our cutoff here. I know you got things you got to do, and we both do. So, Brian, let me give you 2 doomsday scenarios coming out of camp that I see. Darnold beats out Lance. I think Niners Twitter will burn. I also Zane Gonzalez beats out Moody, and we have to trade Moody for pennies on the dollar because you can't expose him to the practice squad.
Yeah.
So these are my 2 doomsday scenarios I've got going in my head.
That's the one that the Zane Gonzalez Moody one is interesting. And I think what would happen in that scenario is they keep both kickers. As annoying as that would be to waste an extra roster spot on a kicker, what would happen is they would keep Moody along and they say, well, Zane Gonzalez kind of won the job and he's too good, and we want that veteran kicker, so we're going to keep Zane Gonzalez. He's going to be our field goal kicker. Jake Moody's going to be the kickoff specialist, and then Wisnowski's going to punt. I wouldn't be shocked at all if Zane Gonzalez is just clearly better and they don't want to go with the rookie kicker who's shaky into the season, that they keep both guys, and Moody is just a kickoff specialist.
Interesting.
But that would
feels like keeping Jimmy G around for some reason.
Exactly. It's the same scenario. You know how competitive the 49ers are. They're not going to give up on their 3rd round kicker that quickly, but they're also not going to stand for missed field goals either.
No doubt about it. Well, Brian, thank you so much for coming out today. I appreciate it. Everybody make sure you follow Brian on Twitter at BD Peacock, and like and subscribe to Locked On 49ers with him and Croc. They do great things over there. And I'll look forward to catching up with you soon. And I'll just say peace and go Niners. And thanks everybody.